we'll start with this. It appears that unified super featherweight champion Michaela Mayer has some reservations about Terry Harper's return to action.
She thinks she's not being taken care of.
She was quoted as saying, "It's way too soon. I feel bad for Terry Harper. She could have had a great career, but she's constantly being moved too quickly. She was rushed into a title shot before she was ready, put in tough fights, and now being rushed back into the ring 3 months after getting knocked out. Shaking my head." To which trainer and promoter extraordinaire Stefy replied, "Was she being rushed when she beat Eva Wahlström at 23 years old after only 9 fights and all the other world-related fighters? Terry is a world-class fighter, would gain nothing beating up lollipop ladies. It's these kind of fights she will learn and gain invaluable experience from." And make no mistake, Stefy Bull speaks from a place of experience of his own. He was a former fighter.
He knows something about it.
And with Stefy Bull on this one, I don't think it's entirely accurate to say that Terry Harper was rushed into an Eva Wahlström WBC title fight, because anybody who saw that fight knows Terry won that fight rather comfortably. In what way was she not ready for Eva Wahlström when she beat Eva Wahlström? Michaela Mayer added, "Terry isn't being looked after at all. Shame on her team." And I don't know if this is Michaela Mayer being opportunistically obnoxious.
Maybe.
Or what. The Alicia Baumgartner fight was a misstep, make no mistake. That was too much too soon for a fighter that was coming off a hand injury and a long layoff.
If there was a misstep, that would be it.
But that said, the notion that Terry Harper was rushed into the Eva Wahlström fight, Terry Harper showed in that fight that she's on level, championship level. She wasn't rushed into the Wahlström fight, wasn't rushed into the Jonas fight, because after you become a champion, those kinds of fights
are going to happen. What do you expect?
An abundance of lighter touches, an abundance of angling, an abundance of playing it safe, staying on the path of least resistance. I find Terry Harper's resume to be one of the more solid resumes that's out there, win, lose, or draw. And perhaps the Alicia Baumgartner fight was a misstep. Perhaps it was a mistake to take on someone so capable, so soon off a long layoff and an injury. Perhaps that was a mistake. But to characterize the Heather Hardy fight as being that kind of fight, having that kind of element of danger.
Michaela Mayer thinks it's too soon for Terry to return to action.
She looks at this fight as a bad idea, an indicator that Terry Harper and her career is not properly being looked after, and I don't agree with that. I don't. The sooner Terry Harper gets out there and reminds herself what she can do, under the right circumstances, of course, circumstances like these.
Heather's a familiar face, but she's not the threat to Terry that Natasha Jonas was.
Heather's a familiar face, but Heather wasn't a big puncher at featherweight. 126 pounds, where she moved up from. She wasn't a big puncher at 126, and she hasn't proven to be a big puncher at 135 pounds. She's about 15 years older than Terry Harper, coming off of 2 consecutive losses.
Tell her the tape, she's got a much smaller frame.
Terry Harper has the edge in youth, the edge in height, the edge in wingspan, longer legs, longer strides. I'd say Terry is the more concussive puncher of the two. Both girls are coming off of losses, but I don't get the sense of impending doom with this fight that I got from the Alicia Baumgartner fight. I mean, I look at the situation, and it seems like the ideal situation to ease Terry Harper back into activity in what is a winnable fight against a familiar face that helps to sell the fight.
What do you want she should do? More crying in the bathtub?
Take more time off away from the ring, even though time off seems to be what affected her. Time away from the ring seems to be what hampered Terry Harper's momentum.
I think she should go on holiday for a few more months and not fight.
You think not fighting, not getting back out there, not getting back on the saddle, you think that's going to help the situation? I can't help but think that Michaela Mayer is being opportunistically critical, almost kicking young Terry Harper when she's down. But she won't be down long, because I'm confident that Terry Harper can win this fight. She can rebound, and the best is yet to come.
Terry's young. She's younger than Michaela Mayer.
She's a lot younger than Heather Hardy. I mean, where do you get that she's in over her head with this fight? Perhaps it seems soon, very soon after the knockout, but if Terry's confident and her team is confident,
getting back out there is an eventuality.
And it would only become harder to do the more distance Terry puts between herself and the squared circle. The more time off she takes, the harder it'll be to come back. So why not just get right back on the saddle in a winnable fight? Winnable fight, yes, but get back out there.
Make up for lost time.
No, I don't think it's too soon for Terry to come back. In other news, Teofimo Lopez posted this via his Instagram account, and it reads, "Let's go back to having fun. Forget the industry of boxing. God's got bigger plans. See you all in May." May is the proposed month this year where young Teofimo will be returning to action, and rumors seem to indicate that top-ranks matchmakers plan on matching him tough, putting him in what could be a sink-or-swim situation against unbeaten 140-pound contender, up-and-comer, Arnold Barbosa. Arnold Barbosa, who has spent some months targeting Teofimo Lopez.
This isn't the first we've heard of this.
We've known for some time that Arnold Barbosa wanted a Teofimo Lopez fight should Teofimo Lopez ascend to the 140-pound division. And here now, he's on the eve of that ascent to that weight class. Arnold Barbosa has been very much interested in locking horns with the former unified champion from the lightweight division. If this fight actually comes off,
It's a sink-or-swim situation.
they'd be matching him pretty tough against Arnold Barbosa. They would. He'd have size on Teofimo Lopez, some experience in the 140-pound division, having faced familiar faces in Mike Reed, Mike Alvarado, Alex Saucedo. That's rough seas for Teofimo Lopez to rebound off a loss in. I mean, I'm not married to the idea that this will be Teofimo Lopez's very next fight, though the rumors are out there that top ranks matchmakers want to make this fight. This would in some ways afford Teofimo Lopez to come back in a big way against a solid guy, a guy who's got some size on him, definitely has experience at 140 pounds, more so than young Teofimo Lopez, who I've been saying the whole time.
All of it.
His very best win, credible win that it might have been over Lomachenko. The dynamic in that fight won't be the dynamic that he faces at 140 pounds, where he's perhaps not the biggest puncher in the room or the bigger guy.
This will afford him an opportunity to make a splash at 140.
But it is risky. Arnold Barbosa will have some size on Teofimo Lopez.
Teofimo in the right headspace for a fight like this.
He better be, because the rest of his young career is still in front of him. His meteoric rise to the height, the elite levels of the lightweight division came to what seems like an abrupt end, and he's still a very young guy, still a very young fighter with his whole career ahead of him.
Miles to travel.
I'm telling you, it's almost like starting off at square one, the way he is completely out of that lightweight picture where all of those titillating fights were waiting for him, a Devin Haney fight, a Ryan Garcia fight. I never actually thought Gervonta Davis versus Teofimo Lopez was realistic, though those two guys being in the same weight class, it sort of lended itself to the fighters' marquee value, the fact they were being talked about so much, these young fighters all in the mix.
But being honest, I never thought Ryan was a realistic option either.
But it does feel like Teofimo is back to square one, back at the beginning. The instability of his life outside of the ring, the situation in his corner with his father.
Is his career in really good hands?
Is it really? The advice that he received from his management and his corner, was that with his best interests in mind? And if nothing changes in his corner, and if nothing changes outside of the ring, can he really rebuild? I don't want to kick this kid when he's down. I like him, but there is that to be addressed.
These are relevant questions that can't be ignored.
You really can't gloss over it and say it doesn't matter, because these elements in Teofimo Lopez's life, not just his career, they might so affect his ability to perform. And I really wonder what his 140-pound campaign is going to look like when the 140-pound division has no shortage of hungry young fighters, animals, punchers.
Big ones.
Arnold Barbosa wants a piece of Teofimo Lopez, though you can also consider the winner of Pedraza versus Ramirez as yet another potential candidate for a Teofimo Lopez fight, even if he makes it through Arnold Barbosa, even if that fight gets over the line. There's a lot to consider when it comes to Teofimo Lopez's potential 140-pound campaign. And just in keeping with the theme of news coming from at or around lightweight, Gervonta Davis could finally have a pay-per-view opponent to silence the doubters. There's a ruling to face George Kambosos Jr. awaits later this year. Davis and his team are looking into a clash with Lomachenko.
Yeah, right.
Gervonta Davis, who faced criticism for battling Mario Barrios and Isaac Cruz in his last two pay-per-view offerings, now has a firm pound-for-pound option. According to trainer Calvin Ford, Lomachenko is the number one target. We are waiting for that fight with Lomachenko. It's going to be a chess match, Ford told ES News. I don't know if Loma will take the chances that he will with Tank, but that's a mega fight to tell you the truth.
Oh, so now it's a mega fight.
Do you guys know what's happening here? Calvin Ford is telling you the opposite of what Floyd Mayweather Jr. told you after the Barrios fight, that they're going to keep everything in-house. And he's telling you the opposite.
The opposite of what Leonard Ellaby said.
After the Isaac Cruz fight, in reference to Devin Haney and how Devin Haney makes good money, but they're not going to pay him that. The article continues, it's a fight that people have been waiting on. I don't know what his, Lomachenko, next fight is, but 2022 is going to be a really interesting year for all of them, to tell you the truth, because they got to fight each other.
You know who his next fight is, or who it might be, and that's why you're mentioning it.
That is why Gervonta Davis's corner, Calvin Ford, is all of a sudden taking a liking to name-dropping Vasyl Lomachenko for a fight that in all likelihood won't happen.
You're just riding that guy's wave, man.
He's had two very good showings against Masayoshi Nakatani, more recently against Richard Comey, whereas you looked less than adequate against an unheralded opponent who wasn't a former champion or even a world-class contender in Isaac Cruz. The article reads, previously, Ford had questioned the Loma fight when asked before facing Barrios. He said, ask yourself, why should we fight Loma? When we wanted to fight him, he didn't want to fight us. He wouldn't even mention our name. And that's just real talk. No, that's
pure bullshit. When did you want to fight Loma?
Vasyl Lomachenko's public call-outs for a Gervonta Davis fight that go all the way back to 2017, 2018, and Gervonta Davis and his handlers' responses to those call-outs indicate the opposite. That Vasyl Lomachenko wanted to fight you and you blew the fight off every time.
Every single time.
Oh, with quotes like that, you might be able to fool a couple of bozos in Baltimore, Maryland that think Gervonta hails the moon and the stars.
Oh yeah, he hails the moon and the stars because he used to live close to their house.
Big fucking deal. What the fuck's that supposed to mean to the rest of us? What's that supposed to mean to me? I mean, I've seen Vasyl Lomachenko call out Gervonta Davis for several years, while Calvin Ford wants guys like me to believe Vasyl Lomachenko wanted no parts of Gervonta. I mean, at what point did Gervonta Davis pursue a Vasyl Lomachenko fight? Did I miss something?
Rolly Romero seems to be off the hook for those sex scandal charges.
Rolly Romero, a TMT fighter who Gervonta Davis was going to fight until that entire situation reared its ugly head and Isaac Cruz stood in his place. But now that Rolly Romero is free and available, in all likelihood, in spite of what Calvin Ford would have you believe, in all likelihood, it will be a Rolly match that gets rescheduled, not a Vasyl Lomachenko fight.
They're not pursuing that.
They never was. After the Barrios fight, Floyd said they're going to keep everything in-house. After the Isaac Cruz fight, Leonard Ellaby said.
Leonard said they're not going to pay through the nose for a Devin Haney fight.
But you think they're going to pay through the nose for a Vasyl Lomachenko fight so he could cross over to Showtime to their neck of the woods? And you think he's going to do that? You think he's going to fight on the cheap?
Get real.
So you might be asking yourself, then what the hell is this? Why is Calvin Ford even talking about a Vasyl Lomachenko fight if they've no real intentions to make it? I'm telling you, they're riding that guy's wave because they know he's on the eve of challenging for 3 of the 4 alphabet titles.
Well, George Kambosos fights Devin Haney or he don't fight Devin Haney.
Regardless of what does or doesn't happen between them, Vasyl Lomachenko is knocking on the door of a WBO title shot that will afford him the opportunity to fight for not just
the WBO title, but 2 others as well.
Not to mention the coveted Ring Magazine belt, which is a lot harder to come by than a simple alphabet title. This is why Calvin Ford and Team Gervonta Davis are all of a sudden name-dropping Vasyl Lomachenko, because while he's got that going on, Gervonta's last set of numbers, his viewing figures for his last fight were so piss poor, so abysmal, Mike Coppinger's sources have been tight-lipped about it ever since. A portion of the article reads, Lomachenko wants to fight Kambosos, and we want to do that fight in Kambosos' native Australia, Arum exclusively told World Boxing News. We can raise a lot of money to do that fight, but we can't do it in the face of COVID. The Australian government won't give us money with COVID rampaging now through Australia. I really believe, and I'm optimistic, that this is the last COVID with the Omicron variant surging all over, but not doing much damage. It's like a fighter in the late rounds throwing a lot of punches, but he's so tired the punches do not affect the opponent. I'd like to do the fight in Sydney. We've explored ways that we could do it. I'm very optimistic. I know Kambosos' manager, Peter Khan, is optimistic, but let's see. And that is what the future holds for Vasyl Lomachenko. COVID or no COVID, Omicron or Optimus Prime.
It's an interesting parallel from Bob Arum.
And maybe that's the way it is. Devin Haney and George Kambosos have been trading barbs on social media. Devin Haney, who stated, "Yo, George, we making this fight happen or what? I'm agreeing to all your terms, whether it's the vaccine or the travel. It's starting to look like some ducking is going on." At Eddie Hearn.
And whether Devin Haney fights George or not,
none of that is going to stop Vasyl Lomachenko from pursuing his world title opportunity, his world title shot. It seems that negotiations are happening behind the scenes between Team Haney and Team Kambosos, and that's all well and good. Whether or not they reach a deal is irrelevant to Vasyl Lomachenko getting his title shot because he's going to pursue it one way or another.
whether Devin gets the belts or George still has them.
And that's why Calvin Ford is all of a sudden name-dropping Vasyl Lomachenko, of all people, a fighter in a fight that his fighter and his team have put off for years now. I mean, literally years, from 2017 till now, that we're in 2022. The Gervonta Davis people have never really been receptive to this fight. They've asserted Gervonta Davis's A-side status and how he's a cash cow, yet he's never made Vasyl Lomachenko an offer.
You guys want this fight so bad, why don't you make him an offer, Mr. Cash Cow?
What fucking good is it being a cash cow if you even are a cash cow when you're not financing the fights you supposedly want? Or is it that you don't really want those fights? You just want the press from mentioning that guy's name because that'll get a couple of bozos.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be a couple of idiots that buy into this stuff.
The ones you've been gaslighting now for years. Name-dropping guys that in all likelihood you're not going to fight while you fight the likes of Mario Barrios and Isaac Cruz and Jesus Cuellar, Francisco Fonseca before them.
Calvin Ford's talking about Vasyl Lomachenko when in all likelihood they're gonna fight Rolly Romero.
These are empty promises to Gervonta Davis supporters, his fans, if they're anything. The guys who actually believe that Gervonta Davis would beat him. Well, you know what I'll go as far as saying is, maybe he would.
Stranger things have happened.
But the fight has to happen for that prediction to even come into it, and that's just it. That fight isn't happening, so who are you trying to kid?
It's not that I think Davis would beat today's Lomachenko. I don't think he'd beat him.
I don't think he would have beat him years ago, and I don't think he can beat him here today in 2022. I still think Vasyl Lomachenko has enough left that he would outclass today's Gervonta Davis, who seems to be regressing to me. He's not getting better, he's getting
worse,
more basic.
But it doesn't matter what I think, and it doesn't matter what you think.
Because a prediction for a fight that isn't even happening is pointless.
It's useless.